Welcome back to another Introduction to Insect Taxonomy and Identification. Today we're going to be talking about Blattodea, which is the cockroaches, and their cousins, the termites. As a reminder, if you will like and subscribe, especially if you're a returning viewer, it really does help me out quite a bit. And I like talking to you guys in the comments if you have any questions or input on stuff. I know some of you have quite a bit of experience with insects, so if you have stuff to add, I always appreciate it. Especially because things like taxonomy are always shifting around and I'm not always up to date. So we've talked about quite a bit. We talked about the entonasts, the pre-insect insectoid-like creatures, the most primitive wingless insects, the primitive Paleoptera who can't fold their wings behind their back. We started on the Neoptera with the stoneflies. These are the insects that are capable of folding their wings behind them or folding them up quite small even in some of these groups. And all of these so far have either been ametabolous, not having any sort of metamorphosis, or they have what is called hemimetabolous lifestyle, which the immature resembles the adult. It just grows larger and grows wings. So today we're going to talk about the Blattodea, which in this cladogram, the Blattodea are split. So this is how I originally learned it. Once upon a time, the roaches were considered their own group, and the termites were considered a separate group, the Isoptera. And these were separate orders, although closely related. Nowadays, after quite a bit of genetic research and research on their symbiotes, their gut symbiotes, it has been determined that the Isoptera are actually a subgroup of the cockroaches. So the termites are actually just very small, modified cockroaches that have a serious taste for wood and like living in a colony. So today what we're going to talk about is just the current order Blattodea, which is the traditional roaches and their cousins, the Isoptera. So what do the Blattodea have in common? So as we start going through this, I'm going to treat the Isoptera or the termites as a separate group still, not because they are a separate group, but because they have kind of distinct characteristics. And when you're talking about the cockroaches, a lot of the things we're going to talk about with the cockroaches just don't apply to the termites. So today I'm going to just talk about the old group Blattodea, which is just the cockroaches. And then next time I'm going to do a smaller presentation just on the termites and how they relate to the cockroaches. So when we're talking about the termites, like I said, we're talking about Neoptera, so they can fold their wings. They're hemimetabolists, which are just like the stoneflies or the dragonflies or the mayflies. They generally have wings, although some of them are secondarily wingless. So either one of the sexes or one of the life stages or one of the morphs, something like that, or sometimes all of the life stages no longer need wings, and so they just don't grow them. Generally, they have a very standard body shape. So when we talk about cockroaches, they have this very oval body shape, and they have these long spiny legs, which are usually referred to as cursorial, which means that they are adapted for running. Cockroaches have the primary mode of movement is running. Even though they have wings and they can fly, generally speaking, they kind of scuttle along. And in their native habitats, when not in people's houses, they generally live like in the underbrush or under the leaf litter, things like that. So they're generally running around, not flying around. They generally have very small cerci on the back. Their head is kind of pronathous, or in this, it's pronathous / like hyponathous, where it points down or points forward. And they almost all have this very large disc-like pronotum on their back. Generally, in the United States and Canada, 5 families are recognized with about 70 species in them, but worldwide there's about 7 families with 4,600 species. And then an additional 9 families of termites, which we'll be talking about next time. Only about a dozen of those 4,600 species are considered pests. So 12 out of 4,600 are the pests that you find in your house or in your garage, stuff like that. So the vast majority of the cockroaches don't live around humans. They generally are either living in like caves or sandy environments or in like the leaf litter of jungles. So even though they are the ones that we see in our house are really disgusting, the vast majority of them have no association with people, and they're just living their lives out in the wild. They generally also have these extremely long filiform antennae, and generally they have like the same sort of body shape as you would find in like a grasshopper or a mantis. It's just that they are adapted to a different lifestyle, but they are closely related to both of those groups. Additionally, they are cosmopolitan. Generally, especially these pest species can be found on every continent. It wouldn't even surprise me if the research stations in Antarctica had roaches living in them at this point. They are found all over the world. Generally, they are considered scavengers. They will eat whatever you put in front of them. I used to raise like Madagascar hissing cockroaches, and they're perfectly happy just eating dry dog food. So they're not particularly picky eaters out in the wild either. And then one of the interesting things with the ones that still have wings is that they have the forewing and the hind wing, and this forewing, which is the visible wing on the cockroach, is thickened and semi-hardened into something called the tegmen, or the tegmina when you're talking about both of them. And this front wing is not really used in flight. It's mostly used for protection. So it's similar to beetles or grasshoppers or mantids. And then the hind wing, which you can't see in this because it's completely covered, is what they unfurl when they need to fly, and it's large, thin, and membranous. Another thing that they all seem to have in common, or not all of them, but a lot of them, is that they reproduce with something called an ootheca, which is a case that they put around their eggs. And the females will secrete this protective case to protect the eggs from predators and parasites. And this ootheca is either deposited somewhere, or sometimes the female will carry it with her, and she will care for her young. So you can kind of start to see the relationship that they have with like termites, which are colonial insects or colony insects. Some of the roaches are kind of sub-colony, sub-social, in that they have some of the characteristics of social insects, even though they frequently live by themselves. Another interesting thing about the cockroaches, going back to the cerci on the back. So you see these short cerci. These cerci are innervated very strangely in that they have very, very large nerves that run through them. Let me just change this to like yellow. These cerci have extremely large nerves that run through them. They come out through the cerci and they innervate into the thoracic ganglia, which are the brains in the thorax of the cockroach. And these ganglia control the legs. And the reason that they have these extremely large nerves that do this, they bypass the brain completely. And so if these cerci detect movement, like from a predator or you trying to squish them, it'll detect the air movement, and it immediately triggers the run response in the cockroach. And it doesn't have to think about it. It doesn't have to spend the time of the nerve going up to the brain and then the brain sending a signal down to the legs in order to run. It just immediately triggers the legs and they scurry off. And this is extremely useful survival-wise, and it's why they're so hard to stomp on, because the second they feel you approach with the movement of the air, they reflexively just take off. So now let's talk about the groups of the cockroaches. So like I said before, so the cockroaches are related to the termites. When I was originally learning this a million years ago, the termites were considered a separate group called the Isoptera. And then I want to say like the mid-2010s, it became kind of the de facto consensus that the termites and the roaches were one group, but they had a different name. It was called the isoblattids or the Blattodea, if I'm remembering this correctly, because I think people thought that the termites were pretty high up, that the termites and the roaches must have split really early. And nowadays we don't think that. We now think, after a lot of genetic research and stuff like that, that the termites are actually buried really deeply into the cockroaches, and they're a very recent evolution. So we're just going to talk about the cockroaches minus the termites today. So you have the three major superfamilies, the Blaberoidea, the Blattoidea, and the Corydioidea. And of these, the Blattodea are probably the largest, most important group, followed by the Blaberoidea and then the Corydioidea. Of these, in these groups, rather, there's a couple families that we need to talk about. So you have the ectobiids in the Blaberoidea. You have the ectobiids and the blaberoids, or the blaberids. It's hard to say sometimes. And these are the two groups of consequence. The ectobiids are these are very small cockroaches. They are most commonly represented in your home by the German cockroaches. So these are generally like small brown cockroaches. Some of them have these stripes on them. The German cockroaches are very easy to recognize. They tend to be in huge numbers in buildings. They have these little brown racing stripes on them. They are the largest family of all the roaches. In the United States, there are 40 species scattered across 14 genera, and they are generally just medium to small. The ones that you would be most concerned with and the ones that you would see the most are the German cockroaches. I'm not going to beat this group to death. If you see these at all, it'll probably be the blattids, unless you go out into the forest to collect these specifically. The blaberoids are the next group, or the blaberids, and these are the giant cockroaches. So this would be something like represented by the giant hissing cockroach of Madagascar, which you can get as a pet. They're very slow moving. A lot of these giant cockroaches are very slow moving. They are mostly found in the tropics. Although they are the second largest group in the world, they are considered a minor group in North America because they are primarily tropically distributed. They are... one of the more interesting things about them is that they're ovoviviparous. Say that 3 times, which means that they give live birth, but they don't give a live birth like a mammal gives live birth. They still have eggs, but the eggs hatch inside the female. She never lays the eggs. So the eggs hatch and then she gives birth to the live young. Another one that you may be more familiar with is like this giant South American cockroach, or the Brazilian cockroach. And this would be the nymph and this would be the adult. Again, because they're hemimetabolists, the nymphs don't have wings. They just have the beginning stages of wing pads on their thorax. But the adults are pretty large, fill the palm of your hand. With the female, this is a female hissing cockroach, and one of the cool things about the hissing cockroaches is their hissing. And they do this through their tracheal system, which are these little holes marked by black spots on their abdomen. And so this is their trachea. This is how they breathe. And so they can squeeze their abdomen real hard and force air through these trachea. And it comes out in like a whistling, hissing sound. And this is used to scare their predators. And it's kind of cute, actually. When I used to raise these in huge numbers, you could, if you just kind of tickle them, they would hiss at you. So the next group that we're going to talk about are the Blattoidea. These are the blattids, which in North America, these are the ones that you're probably most concerned with. These are the major pest groups. And then you have the Cryptocercidae, which are the wood roaches. And then you have the termites, which fall under the Blattoidea, but we're not going to talk about those today. For the blattids, these are most obviously represented by the American cockroach, which is what we were looking up here. The American cockroach is of genus Periplaneta, and Periplaneta is a really, really annoying group. So let me write that down so you're more familiar with it. It's Periplaneta, planeta, like periplanet. This group, the periplanetids, are probably the most common pest cockroaches. So these are the American cockroach, the Australian cockroach, the brown roach, the smoky brown roach, the Turkestani roach. Very, very common pests all over the world. But the common name does not denote their origin. So, for instance, the American cockroach is not from the Americas, it's from Africa. And it's just called the American cockroach. It has different names depending on where it's found, but it's Paraplanta americana is the scientific name, which is why we call it that. The blattids in general also have things like the oriental roach, and the Florida wood roach. So these are the oriental roaches, which are usually medium-sized and completely black, like a shiny patent leather black. The females usually don't have wings; they just have these little wing buds. But they're called the oriental roach, but you'll find them all over the U.S. and Canada and stuff like that. And the group in general has 9 species and 5 genera in North America. So a small number of species, but they're just absolutely everywhere. The other group in the blattids are the Cryptocercids. The Cryptocercids are the wood roaches. And these are, like the name suggests, roaches that eat wood. They're a minor group in North America, which is 5 species in 1 genus, but they're really important evolutionarily. So they're not really, you don't really see these a lot in North America. Mostly they're in China. But they are the evolutionary link to the termites. And they share a lot of characteristics of the termites. So they're subsocial. They kind of tolerate each other. They live amongst each other. The females care for the young. And they spend a lot of time providing their young with resources. Sort of like the earliest stages of a termite colony. And they also have a wood-digesting symbiote. So termites and cockroaches, although they can sometimes, or the roaches sometimes, and the termites always, will eat wood, they don't just have the ability to digest wood. They can't digest the lignins and the cellulose and stuff like that. What they have are bacteria and protists in their digestive system, symbiotic microorganisms that will digest the wood for them. And these Cryptocercids have a lot of the same symbiotes as the termites. And it's kind of this, you can see the evolutionary link where with like the loss of the wings, the development of a colony structure, the care for the young, the eating of the wood, the passing of the symbiotes, that you can see the developing relationship of the termites coming off of this group, termites. And so we'll talk about that more next time. And then finally, you have the Corydioidea. This is such a hard word to say. This is the Corydioids is the family. It's just the one family, the Corydioids. And these are the sand roaches and the cave roaches. And like the name suggests, these are roaches primarily found underground in cave systems or in sandy desert areas. These are probably the most speciose, depending where you're looking. So in North America, there's 5 species in 1 genus. But if you go out to like a desert area, you'll find like all 5 in one place. I'm sorry, 14 species in 5 genera. So it's 14 species in 5 genera. So if you go out to like a desert area or like the beaches of Florida, you're going to have to go to a hot, dry place to find these mostly, unless you're going to like a cave system. They prefer warm climates, and they live in kind of these inhospitable locations. So that is all the roaches, all the roach super families and families. Next time we'll talk about the termites as a separate group, although they are now considered a form of cockroach. And I'll see you guys then. Remember to like and subscribe, talk to me in the comments, and I'll talk to you next time I do the termites. Thanks.